drugs, high, any kind of decision making. But he hired the best team of lawyers, and after he was arrested and we were separated, there was an incident where he swung at me, but I was holding my daughter in my arms, and he missed her head by a hair, and she was 3 months old at the time. And I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't let me leave. I was like, I was barricaded in my bedroom, and there were no locks on the doors, and he wouldn't let me leave, and he wouldn't leave, and I just didn't know how to escape with a 3 month old. It was winter. It was January. It was very cold out, and so I called 911, and I didn't know how bad it was going to be, but I knew he was a vindictive person. And I just knew that once I called 911, but I had no idea how bad it would get. So I raised my daughter the first 3 years and 2 months of her life. He was adjudicated for neglect based on drug use and domestic violence. ACS had brought a case against him, and he was found guilty. But then millions of dollars later and 4 years later, after numerous attempts to try to transfer custody away from me, falsely accusing me of parental alienation, because that's the only thing he could possibly accuse me of. But he really didn't have anything to go on until a play therapist reported him for child sexual abuse without my knowledge or consent, because my daughter at the time, and she was 3, she was saying that she and daddy were bathing in the nude together, and daddy doesn't wear diapers, and she started having little temper tantrums whenever I'd give her a bath, and she didn't want to take a bath. And I remember this one time she just didn't want to take a bath, and I said, well, what do you have at daddy's house? Is there a special color, special bathtub I can get you? And that's when she started to talk about that. And then she had other injuries. She was in the ER, and she slammed the door in her hand. It was an accident, but still. And she was very, very injured. And ACS wanted to keep doing investigations, and they were shut down. And then he went into court, an ex parte same day hearing, and persuaded the judge that I was guilty of parental alienation. And without seeing any evidence, without a trial, without me or my lawyer being present in court, and without us even knowing what relief they were even asking for, they just took my daughter, and she just never came home. So now I see her under supervised visits, and I have to pay $100 an hour to see her. And I only see her twice a week for 4 hours total, because that's really all I can afford right now, and that's even hard to sustain. But she begs to come home still, even though she's 5 now, 5.5, and we have a great time together. But it's been an uphill battle. So that's my story.
Julianne, what is the standard in New York for a parent to be restricted to supervised visitation? Is there a standard?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not I think.
I mean, they've never told you why you were required to have supervised visitation?
Well, I was never found to be an unfit parent. I was never accused of neglect or abuse or drug use or any kind of violence or a crime. I had never been arrested. I was never subject to any child protective proceeding. He was, but I wasn't. And I don't think it was ever determined that I was an unfit parent, because there was never an imminent risk assessment performed. In fact, his attorney had requested it, and the judge said no, because the mother is not a danger to her child. There's no need for an imminent risk assessment. But I guess my ex was able to persuade the judge that I was guilty of parental alienation, and that I can't be with my daughter unsupervised because I am poisoning, or I can poison her mind against her father. Therefore, I have to be supervised for someone to monitor everything that I say to my daughter.
One interesting thing about, I hadn't really thought about it before, was that false allegations of sexual abuse are a key feature in both your stories. I hadn't kind of made that connection before. In Lynette's case, it's somebody completely alien, basically a kid in school, right? Right, Lynette?
Yeah, it was a school bully, somebody that my middle daughter went to school with in Georgia.
And it was just a spiteful, made up thing.
Yeah, it was a spat, they were about to leave elementary school and go to middle school. And that when they get to middle school, it's drama, drama, drama.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that the state of Georgia, for whatever reason, they thought it was important to break up your family. That the fact that this allegation was made was important enough to break up your family. Now, that's in Georgia. And in New York, a play therapist who is, I guess, somewhat more official than a classmate in the school, made an allegation which might have been irresponsible, but basically the state didn't take it seriously at all. And this is kind of interesting. How would we explain that difference? Julia?
Well, what's also really interesting and very weird about my case is that when my ex went into court in that ex parte same day hearing, asking the judge to transfer temporary custody of my daughter to him, the ACS investigation on him for this child sexual abuse claim that was sent in by this social work intern, that had just barely begun. So it's very, very strange because ACS was actually their protocol. And if you read, I was reading all the case notes, the whole chain of command when someone reports an allegation of abuse, it goes to like the child abuse headquarters for ACS. ACS is in charge of that. And then there's a whole chain of command. And I was reading all of it, and their protocol is when someone's under investigation, usually they prepare to suspend that person's visits. That parent who's under investigation, their visits usually get suspended. And for him to preempt an entire ACS investigation where they were prepared to actually suspend his visits, but he preempted that and he just basically circumvented the ACS investigation somehow and persuaded the judge not to pay any attention to that I was guilty and responsible for a third party play therapist for making a report based on her concerns that my daughter was,
Well, isn't that interesting? I mean, now ACS, explain a little bit what ACS is.
Well, ACS in New York is Child Protective Services, and they call it ACS. It stands for, I believe it's Agency for Children's Services.
But it's actually not a part of the government, right? It's not actually a department. It's not actually a department of the government, is it?
I thought it was paid. It's paid for by the taxpayers. It's paid for by taxpayer dollars.
Administration for Children's Services.
Administration for Children's Services.
Yeah, every state is different. Child Protective Services, CPS. In Georgia, it's the Department of Family and Children's Services, and they call it DFACS.
Yeah,
right.
States call it different.
Yeah, every state they call it something different, but yes, it's CPS.
Right.
And
okay, so it actually is Okay, yes, I knew it.
Yes,
My-
NYC.gov. It's Administration for Children's Services. The website is NYC.gov. So ACS would be like an umbrella with the NYC.
There's another organization, Julianne, that's not part of the government, right? I mean,
Oh, the
the-
one that supervises.
Heather.
Oh, Heather.
Plus-
Actually, Heather, well, she works for Legal Aid Society, and Legal Aid Society, as far as I know, is funded by the state as well.
Yeah, legal aid, right?
Do receive private donations. I know that. They're not mandated to report the donations or where the donations come from. They get millions of dollars a year in donations. But they are, they are state subsidized, I believe.
Yeah, there's so many women that are afraid to report abuse for that reason because they don't want to lose their children. Because exactly. Yes, because I was reading about your foundation.
Oh, yeah. If I had to do it all over again, I rather be beaten and whipped every single day than to miss Christmas with my daughter.
That's a pretty horrible thing to say. And I don't know, isn't
I mean,
that-
a mom wants to be with her child. I understand that, it's like, what do you do? Do you stay or do you, you're torn in a rock and a hard place.
It's so true. And I would not have left my relationship had it not been for her almost getting really hurt. That was like a wake-up call for me. I didn't care being choked and punched and thrown, and I didn't care. I think like the problem, a lot of people, they don't understand the emotional and psychological
Turmoil.
and abuse that goes along with physical, because as you said, emotional and psychological can sometimes even be worse than physical. The physical is just one part of abuse, but when someone's constantly degrading you and calling you a waste of space and saying you can't do anything and you're incompetent and like every day, and you just want to die. Like, I just remember I just wanted to like disappear and just crawl under the bed, but not being with my daughter, it's the worst hell that, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So.
It's very sad that the courts would give the child to an abuser. And it happens all the time.
All the time, and it's a whole racket. I mean, the family court is $1 trillion industry, and the judges and the attorneys for the children and the parent coordinators and the supervisors and the psychiatrists and the court attorneys, everyone is making money, and it's in their best interests to drag a case on and on and on. There's no incentive to settle. And when they see, these judges are supposed to be well educated, they're supposed to be knowledgeable. How could they not recognize signs of a toxic, abusive person? Because abusers, they tend to be vindictive and obsessive, and when they can no longer physically abuse their partner in the household, then they start weaponizing the court system to financially abuse them and just torture them and use the child as a pawn, because taking your child away is the ultimate worst abuse and punishment. And I think for me, this was punishment. This was payback in his head for calling 911.
Protect yourself, basically, to protect yourself and your child, your daughter. And I'm still intrigued by the difference between y'all's cases. In Lynette's case, uh, you know, an irresponsible false allegation of, you're in the dark room, an irresponsible false allegation of child abuse leads to children being taken away for 2 years.
Yeah, and what I noticed too is for some reason, physical abuse, drug use, they forgive it. They can rehabilitate. But for some reason, allegations of sexual abuse, of child sexual abuse, is like the worst allegation somebody can make in family court. That is like a buzzword. Child sexual abuse, automatically they take the kid away. I mean, that is just like the courts love taking children away from parents for allegations of child sexual abuse more so than allegations of physical abuse and neglect and reckless behavior and drug use and other types of violence. Because this happened to another woman involved in our foundation. Same thing happened to her. She's now seeing her child under supervision because there was an allegation of child sexual abuse made against her ex. And
Against her ex.
she was accused of parental alienation.
But this is almost exactly the opposite of Lynette's case. This is what's sort of fascinating. Lynette, you've gone silent.
Sorry, I had you on mute. I was making sure my daughter was at a friend's house and she's home. So yeah. But yes, I have tried to reach out to him, because I don't want to be, accused of parental alienation. And so I've tried to get him to, he actually hung up on her. She wanted to call him and he hung up on her.
Is this the father?
Yes.
Of your daughter?
Father, my daughter. She wanted to talk to him on the phone and he hung up on her.
Oh my gosh.
Well, okay, but that's how this is which daughter is this?
Hannah.
Okay, the youngest.
Yes.
Okay, but I mean, what I wanted to focus on, and what I still want to focus on is, the toxicity of the system when it comes to allegations of child sexual abuse, because that is basically the root of your problems, is that Jack was accused, apparently falsely, of what was he accused of exactly?
Yeah, it was a sexual allegation. He was accused of
Against which daughter?
Hannah. Well, against Hannah and Leah. Leah is now 16.
So against the
But
youngest.
she was 13 at the time.
And she was accused of sexually molesting.
No, that he was doing things to her and Hannah, the younger one.
And how old was Hannah?
This was in 2017. So let's see, 17, 18,
Hannah
19,
was like 5?
14. No, Hannah was 4. They took Hannah away when she was 4. And we got her back when she was 6. It took us 2 years to fight and get her back.
Oh my gosh. And but what I'm curious about is, why did they take, so wait, you have 3 daughters, right?
Yes, they are 17, 16, and 8.
So
yeah.
A classmate who was accused of sexually abusing your daughter?
No.
No.
Classmate made the accusation against her husband.
Yeah, against the dad.
Your daughter made the allegation against.
No, a friend.
Yeah, they're saying, the friend was saying that my daughter said that they were taking showers together.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I think it's similar, because I don't think our cases are that different, because they probably accused you of parental alienation, right? Did they didn't?
No, they accused me of neglect. They were trying to say I was neglecting my children by staying with him.
Oh yeah. You see, that's the catch-22.
Like adjudicated for neglect.
Yeah.
Yes. I was a teacher and I was teaching. I was a director of a daycare. And so I lost my job over it because I was teaching. And so it was an adjudication for neglect for me, but him, it was an allegation of sexual abuse.
Which state? Okay, so this is really interesting.
Georgia. Mm-hmm.
Georgia. Okay, now in New York State, so it was the same allegation. My daughter was saying she was bathing with daddy and daddy doesn't wear diapers and they're nude together in the bathtub. And she was over three, she was three, 3 and 2 months, 3 years old when and she's a very smart little girl. She was speaking at 2.5. She was speaking very well. But like, it's the same allegation, the bathing together, basically. And your daughter was 4 at the time?
Well, the youngest was 4, and the 12-year-old, she would have been 12 at the time. It was in 2017. She was 12.
Okay, so this is
But
really
he
interesting.
denied it.
Yeah, so this is interesting because it's the same allegation, the bathing together, right? And although my daughter was 3, yours was 4, and then 12. But when ACS, so in New York State, because I was just curious, because it did come back after they took my daughter away from me way before the investigation was even complete. But once ACS did complete their investigation, I think it's the case is open for 90 days, and I think that's the period, and it came back unfounded. And I said to, well, first of all, when they interviewed my daughter, she didn't say anything. It was really late at night, and all she just kept saying was, "Mommy, I want my mom." It was like 10:30 at night. It was like really late. She was hungry, and just kept saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." That's it. So she didn't say anything in the interview. And then I said, "Well, at what age do you consider it inappropriate for a father and a daughter to bathe together?" And they said 10 years old, that's when they feel it's inappropriate for a father and a daughter to bathe together, when the daughter's 10 years old, over 10 years old. That's what they said to me. So it sounds like different states have different preferences in terms of what they feel is appropriate parenting. There's not a consensus on that. And I don't know, girls, I know girls are, entering puberty earlier and earlier today in these days. And earliest I heard was a 7-year-old girl menstruating, at 7. So I don't know what your thoughts are on in terms of at what age do you feel it's inappropriate for a father and a daughter to bathe together, if at all,
Yeah, I mean, I know that the American Academy of Pediatrics has, different views on what they, talk about parents about
Yeah.
together.
And what's interesting, I mean, it's not even because, there's ACS had mentioned it's a parenting style. Oh, there she is.
You can join us. You don't have to send her away.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful girl. So it must be so great. So you guys have both, you have them back. How was it for your daughter? I mean, that must have been really difficult being away from each other for 2 years.
Yeah, it was hard. We had supervised visits at like Wendy's and Chick-fil-A, and Christmas at a it was like an event for foster family. You know what I'm saying? Like it was really hard on her and on them. It really was.
My goodness. Was there a period of time that you didn't have any contact at all, or were you able to still have some contact?
No, we were able to see them. I mean, when they took them, I had phone calls. At first I had phone calls and then weekend visits. And we did they were, consistent with that, with keeping our visits and things like that. But they did take away, one of my visits because one of the children had gotten a cell phone and they didn't want them to have cell phones. So they took away my visit over that
Oh my gosh.
because they did not want them to have cell phones at all.
Oh yeah, you're not allowed, I'm not allowed to record. They have very strict rules. They don't want any recordings. Of course, family court doesn't want anyone to record.
Oh, of course. They don't want to witness.
No witnesses. Mm-mm.
Exactly.
I always say, like, I don't care if someone wants to monitor me or surveil me because I don't really have anything to hide. If you have nothing to hide, who cares, right? If you're being recorded. I mean, that alone says a lot about the family court system. It's so secretive.
Yes, that you can't take your phones in the courtroom, and no cameras in the courtroom, right? There aren't cameras in the courtroom, are there?
No. I mean, I sneak my cell phone in. I mean, no one has ever searched my bag and removed my cell phone from my bag, but absolutely I remember I had like a speaker, like one of those like portable speakers, and it was in my bag, and somebody made it. Oh, is that a recording device? Check out, make sure it's not a recording device. And I was like, no, but they're very, very sensitive to that. And I mean, there's a lot of malfeasance in the family court system. I mean, they know what they're doing, and it makes me really sick. I just don't understand how some of these people could sleep at night when their head hits the pillow, knowing that they have destroyed families. They have broken the hearts of so many children. I mean, my daughter was abruptly severed from me twice right before Christmas. And it's like, how cruel could you be to do that to a child, uproot a child's life, uproot her home, her mother, her grandparents. She hasn't even seen her grandparents. My parents are not allowed to see my daughter. They haven't. My dad is 91 years old with stage 4 lung cancer, and he hasn't seen my daughter since December 2nd, 2019. And they don't care. They don't have any hearts. They are heartless, soulless, money-hungry people. That's all I can.
All about the racketeering, to just keep the racketeering going and to keep the cycle going.
It's racketeering. It's extortion. They're forcing a parent to have to pay exorbitant amounts of money. I mean, we're not talking about they gave me a discounted rate because I'm, not making an income, and it's $100 an hour. That's their discounted rate. And when my ex was supervised, he paid over $100,000 for his supervision.
Wow.
$100,000 he paid to that same agency, because if you want to spend quality time with your child, let's say $250 an hour, or even $100 an hour, depending on they call it a scale. They call it the working scale, but it's really not a sliding scale. I'm sorry, they call it the sliding scale, but it's really not. It's not fair. And then I filed for state assistance because I qualified, and my ex's attorney and the attorney for the child had vehemently opposed it. Had submitted voluminous pages to oppose me receiving any help from the state to pay for my supervised visits. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, you're an attorney, a court-appointed attorney to represent my daughter's best interests. How is it in my daughter's best interests for you to deny me easier access or any kind of way that would make it easier and more feasible for me to see my daughter, because it is in the best interest of your client, my daughter, to be with her mom and to be able to spend quality time with her mother. And the whole thing is just it doesn't make sense to anyone. And what's really wild about your case, Lynette, is that they took, I mean, well, I guess I understand now that, so you were accused of neglect, and that is something that ACS told me as well. And that's why I was, you're in this catch-22 as a parent. You're very conflicted, because on the one hand, they tell you that if you don't report abuse, and that something is going on in the home, you're going to be accused of neglect. They told me that same thing. They said if I had stayed with my husband, if I had stayed in that abusive relationship, I would have been charged with neglect for allowing my child to remain in an unsafe situation. But it doesn't make any sense, because then the courts hand your child to your abuser. So there's a disconnect between ACS, the NYPD, and the family court system. I mean, even the police told me that they know that it's like a banana republic in the family court system. Like, they do their job, and they're pretty vigilant. I do believe they do their best to protect, our citizens. And then once it gets to the court system, it's not about justice. It's about whoever can afford justice with the best attorneys.
Right. I mean, it really is. And see, the thing was, the interesting thing she said, like, they took a family photo when they gave us our kids back. They wanted a family photo, like, oh, we reunited this family. And she was all like, and we don't care if you get divorced. We really don't care if you get divorced. Wow.
So in Georgia, they won't let you get a divorce unless you can prove physical abuse?
South Carolina.
In
Carolina.
South Carolina. Wow. Yeah.
It's the dark ages.
Carolina.
She's basically living in a
Georgia.
country that never left from the middle, has never graduated from the Middle Ages.
I mean, I am still legally married as well. I can't get a divorce, but for a different reason. They will not divorce you in New York State until your custody is, and your financial, any kind of disagreement in terms of custody or finances needs to be resolved before they will legally divorce you. So I've been separated for over 5 years, but still legally married to my ex. He's still my husband. I don't know when we will be getting a divorce, but I know in California they allow you to divorce before the other matters are resolved, and that makes sense, because you can't really move on with your life.
In California, you have legal separation too, and South Carolina does not have legal separation.
No, South Carolina does not recognize legal separation. Isn't that strange?
That is real. I had no idea. I didn't know at all.
Here, take her out there, baby. Take her out there.
I'll
Take
put
her
her on the bed.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
okay. We don't mind. Don't mind the three
Not,
cute kittens at all.
let me see the kitten.
Okay.
Three
Yeah.
cute kittens is just fine.
Yeah.
Not a problem. By the way, this is Hannah, right? This is your youngest, right?
She's 9.
And who's the smallest? Who's the smallest?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, Hannah may be the youngest, but who's the smallest? The
Kitty.
cat.
Cat. Kitty cat. Don't scratch, kitty. Luna.
Must have a name.
Luna.
Luna, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, my grandson, Ezra, he is almost 15 months now.
Wait, he's 1, right?
Yes, he's almost 15 months. Mhm.
which means he's almost 2.
Well, 15 months. No, that means he'll almost be a year and a half pretty soon. Let me see him. Let me see him.
So I'm 9.5.
That's right, you're 9.
Adorable. What? How adorable!
Yeah.
Julian, what happened to you?
Is
Yeah, this is my teen mom over here, Haley.
3 generations.
Cat.
3 generations and a cat.
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful. How old is he?
1.
He's 15 months, right, Haley?
15 Oh wow.
15 months.
Year and a quarter.
So my
Yeah.
son is 19.
Hang on. Let me see.
My
Yeah,
son's
15 months.
months.
Cat. Cat. I know. Cat. Cat. Kitty cat. Does the kitty cat say meow?
Lynette, you were blessed with a very beautiful family.
Blessed.
You may have other problems, but you got a beautiful family.
I am blessed, very much so. Are you gonna give me a hug? Oh, I love you too. I love hugs. I know. Yeah. I know.
Even a friendly cat.
Now, Hannah, here, come over here, sweet kitty. Okay.
Anyhow, I have the feeling that you people are telling you that it's bedtime. Is that what the message I'm hearing? The sort of tacit, unspoken message I'm hearing from everybody. Because it's 10 o'clock in your Eastern time.
Here, come get Ezra. Come get Ezra.
Let's wrap it up here. I want each of you to make a little bit of a statement for this first gathering. What do you think? I mean, I think Lynette knows. I don't know if I've actually had this chat with Julianne or not, but I know that Lynette knows what I think should happen to the family courts. But what do you all think should happen to the divorce and custody system? How could it be reformed?
Do you want to go first? I'll go first, I guess. There absolutely needs to be more mental health awareness and more awareness into the effects of domestic violence and the personality traits of an abuser. And judges should be able to recognize when someone is weaponizing the court system and using the child as a pawn to continue to abuse the victim. And we've been in litigation for over 5 years, and I just feel like there should be a limit. I feel like there should be a limit in terms of how many years you can litigate for child custody. I just feel like it's so morally wrong to allow a family or 2 parents to litigate for so many years over a child, and how much damage that does the child to see his or her parents fighting like that in court. I personally think there shouldn't be any like court system to determine custody. I think it should all be done through mediation. That's my personal opinion.
You started off way far away from me, but you came around to something much closer. Okay, so we'll have to talk about that in future meetings. Lynette, what do you believe should happen?
Actually, what the last thing she said was pretty much spot on, that mediation should be focused, that should be a big focus. Mediation with the 2 parents, that it should be the biggest focus on that, to try to foster, co-parenting and getting along. I think there should be a big emphasis on co-parenting and teaching each side how to co-parent and how, to put your differences aside and to think of the children, to not make this about the two people, that it should be about the family and about mediation and just keeping the family together. I mean, even if the two parents aren't together, you're still a family.
True. It's really true. Yeah, that's what I say. Absolutely. We're still family. We'll always be family. We're always going to be connected through our children. And I feel like you just have to make it work for the kids.
Right now, nothing's working for either one of you.
The lawyers,
And-
Right.
I hate to say, I mean, because you're a good, the industry, they don't want, it's like the pharmaceutical industry not wanting holistic medicine or alternative medicine to take over the industry, the market. So it's the legal industry. I mean, you imagine how much they make a fortune on divorce custody litigation. They would be losing so much money. Lawyers don't like putting in that arbitration clause. They don't like doing it because they're putting themselves out of business.
Well, I mean, there's also the problem that arbitration is even less bound to respect people's rights than the court system. Our arbitration, the word itself means coming to an arbitrary decision.
Mediation, I guess, maybe mediation.
And I mean, our arbitration, I mean, of course, mediation is just sort of a positive feedback for more litigation is the problem. I mean, I guess I think I've mentioned this to Lynette. I don't think I've mentioned it to you, but based on my experience, and we can follow this up later. My great proposal would be that we go back to a very ancient custom and tradition throughout the world, and that is that marriage should be a detailed contract that people work out between each other, and that basically the state, the power of the state should in effect never be invoked for anyone who does not have a contract. This would have a disastrous effect on modern American culture, which fosters complete spontaneity, instant gratification, and lack of planning. If you had a system where the state could not intervene, except in the case of a written contract, the adjustment, I think, would be horrible. I mean, basically, we have a culture that treats basically sex as fast food. And if you get sick from McDonald's or burned by McDonald's coffee, you can sue, and the state will deal with it. But that's kind of tolerable, I guess, for fast food. But the essence of human society is the relationship between man, woman, and child. And to foster this culture of irresponsibility that we've got, I think is a terrible disaster. And I think it's entirely the wrong thing that society has evolved this way. And does that shock you all?
No, I think what you said really resonated with me. I think that's a brilliant idea. I can't even think of something better. I mean, if people were held accountable for their word, I mean, that's the problem. People are not, they do not take their word seriously. People make promises and they break their promises and they change their mind and they have just people are not held accountable for their actions anymore today. So having a contract, I mean, this is something that I thought about personally, that I would never have a child again with anyone else unless I had a contract. And you can call it a prenup, you can call it whatever you want, but a contract that stipulates exactly, how you're going to be splitting your parenting time, and where the child's going to be living, and where the child's going to go to school, and the child support, and financial matters, and all of that, just everything laid out, because it's much easier to negotiate when you're getting along versus when you're not getting along.
True enough. Lynette, what do you think?
Yes, I mean, sorry about moving around.
You like to move around on these podcasts. I've noticed that you can't stay still.
It's well, there's always
I like the way
kids.
you
Always
you go into places of darkness.
Well, the kids always need something, somebody always needs a snack or something to drink. But yes, it's, sorry about that.
No
It-
problem.
It's okay. It's interesting. It's dynamic, it's like a movie background.
But yeah, I mean, it's very hard. I agree with everything you've said. I mean, it's hard when you've got two people that have different personalities and different dynamics. They come from different backgrounds. There's a lot of, generational curses, things going on. They've had alcoholism in their family, or this, or drug addiction, and things like that. That has a lot to do with their parenting skills. And I think that the family court system needs a complete overhaul. I mean, it's never going to change. I mean, it's just not. I don't think it ever will. I mean,
It's never
Well, I
going.
mean, there's certainly some very specific things we could do. We could, within the confines, we could create a rule on contract, and try to push people into contractual marriages, or call it contractual mating if people don't want to get married. I mean, if you're going to have children, you've got to have an agreement in advance. And then the other thing we can do, and I mean, this is a big passion of mine, we must actually, I mean, Julianne, the thing you said that I disagree with most is the idea that mental health should be factored into it more heavily than it is, because I think basically judging people's mental health is one of the most abusive things that actually does go on in the courts right now. It is so easy to say, to make mental health evaluations, and even this concept of parental alienation is a kind of mental health evaluation of what people, it's saying, make me your judge so that you can't make any judgments at all. I mean, I think that in all probability, you and Lynette can both judge. I mean, I can form all kinds of opinions about what you ought to do, and what your relationship with your ex should be, and what his relationship with his kids be. I can come up with all kinds of ideas, but basically, your ideas, based on your actual experience, are more important.
Well,
And so why give judges this kind of power? And I mean, what I say over and over and over again is we need to disempower judges and create juries. Return the power of the people to the people.
yeah, having a jury makes sense. I think when you have more eyes on a situation, to scrutinize a situation, it's going to be more honest. And when I mention mental health, I'm really referring to more scientific means of assessing mental health, like brain scans, functional MRIs, things that they don't employ in the family court system right now. These tests are, from what I understand, they reveal a lot about someone's, and if someone has an injury like a bullet in their head, or I think there should be more emphasis on mental health, because look, if a parent has an untreated serious persistent mental illness, let's say schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever, that could endanger a child, I mean, then a child's health safety is at risk. So I mean, that's what I meant by that. I think so. It is really easy to abuse that and to weaponize that, because that's what the abusers do. Whether they have money to pay people off, or there's one crooked, court psychiatrist that they can influence. It's a little bit too insular. I think that there should be more of like a jury, or if you are going to assess someone's mental health, it should be like a forensic, very thorough, like 3 to 4 months, kind of investigation, where they're interviewing your private therapists, your babysitters, your friends, your family, and multiple doctors sort of being in on it. And, just because people have biases. And if you're just relying on one judge, and this judge has no oversight, and he doesn't really have to report to anyone, he's like the king. These judges, female, male judges here in this country, they are kings and queens. They can make any kind of decision they want, and they really, it's very difficult to reverse, and they don't really have to answer to anyone. And there should be a lot more transparency in the family court system. We need the media to expose what's going on. We need a lot more just transparency and more people involved. And I think we should just get rid of the whole thing, to be honest. I don't even think we need the family court system, because they don't really do anything.
They're like blood sucking vampires.
They just take your money, and that's it,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't get a fair agreement. There's nothing fair about it, and the children are the ones that have to suffer, and shuffled between homes, and the time, and it's split from this time to this time, and it's
I can't imagine. My parents are still together, and I know that but like growing up, I just can't imagine having to be shuffled between homes, and forgetting something that was important at mom's house or dad's house. And it's so confusing, that whole idea. I just think children really, especially in the developing years, they really need consistency and a sense of safety. And moving around is definitely shown it's not healthy for a child's sense of security.
Well, and yet that is where all the family courts are headed right now, is to keep people in constant motion. Anyhow, there's a lot of analysis we've got to do. Lynette told me before we started that she has to be up at 5:30 in the morning, and it's now 10:30. And so she's not going to get anywhere close to 8 hours of sleep. So let's adjourn for tonight. And I like the synergy between you two. And so let's reconvene and make this sort of a regular event. How about it? Y'all okay with that?
absolutely. I know there's a lot you can talk about with family courts. It's ongoing, and I'm sure we could get a lot of public opinion about it and what's going on. And
one thing, Lynette, I'd like to point out to you, Julianne, rather, I wanted to point you about Lynette. Lynette's picture is very sharp, and yours is kind of fuzzy. I don't know why that is.
Oh, that is interesting. I don't know why that. She must have better lighting, which
Well, something. I mean, yeah, you're Lynette, do you perceive her as a little bit grainy?
See, I have this light.
phone or laptop.
It's too much. This light is like too bright. See if I
Julie, laptop or a phone?
This is a laptop, but see this.
Yeah,
display?
it works better on a phone, I think. Laptops just don't get the camera views.
Oh, are you on a phone?
Phone, yeah, telephone, the telephone Zoom is actually a better quality if you use a phone.
Yeah, the camera quality is better. That's probably what it is. The phone.
Yeah,
the
Look great. Yes, you look great.
camera, but you're right. Their colors they pop. They pop. So I'll work on that for next time.
Anyhow,
I love meeting you.
thank you, Jeanette, Julianne, thank you, and Letta, and I think this has been this is going to be a new tradition for us, and the family courts instruments of mass destruction.
Yes, I would love the family court system. I would love to change it. So,
Yeah, Lynette, you get some sleep. Julianne, get some sleep.
All
And we will talk very soon.
okay,
Nice to meet
Signing off for May 15th.
okay.
Ides of May. Good night, everybody.
you.
Good
Good night.
night.